right, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Recharging the Human Battery. I'm your host, Dr. Stefano Sinicropi. We're on AM 950 radio. It's a great day to be alive. Welcome to the show. Glad you're joining us again, and hopefully you've been listening in as we've talked so many health and wellness topics and some random stuff here and there. But I think today I think futurism, or thinking about the future, is one of the best exercises, because we've got to think about not what things look like today, but what things look like tomorrow. So when I say tomorrow, I mean where are we going in 2030? Where are we going in 2040? What's medicine going to look like? And I think it's especially important for those of us that are in healthcare, because number one, with the advent of machine learning, on AI and robotics, I would really suggest that healthcare professionals really think about job security, being really understanding what AI can do, understanding how to use this stuff, understanding where robotics is going and where your particular field, like whether you're a nurse or a physician or outside of healthcare, legal. I mean, there's so much legal stuff going on. Now with the use of AI, if you're a financial professional, between AI and the blockchain and cryptocurrency, and the Wall Street going to go on these tokenized things that run on things like Ethereum and other types of blockchains that you may or may not have heard of. What I would suggest is, for anybody actually in any profession, is to really stay on top of the future trends in your own organizations. And never before, kind of in the history of mankind, when it comes to technology, have we ever been in the midst of a technological revolution that is coming now. So I think that's one perspective. The other perspective, which is really, exciting, just as a human, I think it's a really exciting time to be alive. Actually, I know a lot of you are afraid of what's happening. You're probably watching the movie Terminator one too many times with everything going on with AI and everything else that we're doing. But the truth is that what is coming down the pipe with health and wellness, personalized medicine, the discoveries that AI is going to make, the advanced robotics that are going to completely change our lives, not just as healthcare providers actually doing procedures, actually being caregivers for people. Just imagine a world where these centers, that house, like, for example, elderly people or people that have memory issues, have, robots that are, fully autonomous, I don't want to say conscious. I don't want to scare you guys. That is coming, unfortunately. But, being able to take care, right? Because, robots, AI, it doesn't get tired. It doesn't need to sleep. It doesn't really, or at least it shouldn't really have biases. And so, the robots being able to, take care of us, as caregivers is going to be a big deal going forward. And, some of these things that you see in the movies, I would urge you guys to really stay on top of what's going on right now, because it is happening so rapidly. If you just look at, for example, Tesla's robots, if you think about where they were just a year ago and where they are today, the way they can move and the way they can, their dexterity of their hands, the way they walk, all these things have progressed so much so that I heard one guy that was talking about visiting the plant where they're developing these things. He actually said he was scared when he saw how much progress was made just in a 12-month period of time. So it's coming. So I thought I'd spend today talking about, or at least having a mental exercise in everything that's potentially coming down the road in health and wellness, so you can start thinking about this, whether you're a healthcare professional, whether you're just interested in health and wellness, whether you're like my son who's a pre-med student in college, or whether you're just a consumer that's looking to live to 120 years old, or wants that rare disease healed and all kinds of things. So we'll see on the other side of the break. We'll talk about what I think are the most important trends that are coming down the pipe. We're on AM 950 radio. This is Recharging the Human Battery. I'm Dr. Sinicropi, and let's talk future just on the other side. Recharging the Human Battery Radio. I'm your host, Dr. Stefano Sinicropi. We're at AM 950 Radio, and we are talking about the future of health and wellness. And I can tell you, as a physician, I really stay on top of this stuff. I've had several people on my show talking about AI and the way it's going to affect things like personalized medicine and the way it's just going to change our lives in general. And interestingly enough, I have an upcoming podcast with this really, I don't want to give it all away. I like to just keep people in suspense, but I have a guy who is just a really renowned researcher who had a spinal cord injury himself and had lost the use of some function, and actually has not only been a pioneer in researching brain-computer interfaces. You guys have heard of things like Neuralink, which is an Elon Musk deal. But he actually also has implanted devices into his brain and has interfaced with computer systems, and through going into these virtual reality worlds and doing some other stuff, was able to actually regain function from his spinal cord injury. And it's just so fascinating. You'll see when I do that podcast that he has like these leads in his head, and that's how he connects to the computer. So if you think this is just stuff that you see on science fiction, I mean, they are actually going into these worlds, and it's absolutely wild. And the ability to restore function in a lot of people is going to be incredible. Coming down the pipe between utilizing like nanomaterials, nanotechnologies, being able to actually rebuild spinal cords and nerves and things like that, but then also being able to rewire the brain by going into some of these virtual worlds. And I dare say this again, I'm not trying to make people nervous, but being able to upload sort of our personality into the ethos, into the web. For example, I mean, these are things that are out there in movies, and there's movies about it. Like I think there's like a show called Upload or something like that, where you can upload your entire self into the cloud. And it may seem wild, but I can tell you that scientists that are working on this stuff, it's just a matter of when, not if these things are able to be achieved. And so there's just so many different, issues out there. And as a physician who follows a lot of this stuff, there's some predictions that a lot of the things that we do, like diagnosing patients and actually treating them and even doing surgeries, I mean, we're not too far away where, one, we're going to be, I know we have robotics now, but I mean like advanced robotics, where an actual robot is doing the surgery, somewhat guided by surgeons. I don't think we're that far off from that. So these are things, if we don't keep on top of these things like anything else, we're going to end up being dinosaurs and no longer relevant. So this is kind of near and dear to my heart. So let's talk about, like, I just did 13 trends that I think are going to really change things going forward. So trend number one, that people ask me about this stuff all the time on social media, and actually ask me all the time, is this AI driven personalized medicine. It's really fascinating. I mean, even now my patients are coming in and they're saying, hey, I had a panel of labs and I threw them into ChatGPT, and then ChatGPT told me all the things that that I need. And I could tell you, this is the most basic stuff. It's actually pretty helpful because people come in and they've already interacted with it, let's say an entity, and so they're already thinking about their health and wellness, so they kind of know what direction they want to go in, and then I can use my expertise to have a deeper, dive discussion with them. But even more, but what I'm talking about when we talk about AI-driven personalized medicine is really things that where we can upload our entire genetic code. We can upload all of our labs, all of our scans, total body, analysis through, in and out, like how our proteins are working, all these other things. And the AI will be able to come up with an immediate treatment plan and parameter. So, one, it's exciting as a consumer, but it's actually exciting as a physician because we are humans, and even despite the fact that even if we've had the most advanced training and gone to every single course and studied everything and study every single day, of our lives, we still do not have access to everything. And that's why all those mystery diagnosis shows are so popular, because some of those things, literally 300 physicians have looked at it and they can't figure out what's wrong. And I can tell you AI is not 300 physicians, it's 3 billion it's 3 billion, 30 billion physicians all looking at the problem from a different angle and coming outside of the box. And as AI really evolves into AGI, okay, which is artificial general intelligence, where it's a lot smarter than humans are, and then you multiply it by millions and billions and so on. Imagine that they can look at this and they don't need to sit there for 6 hours on one patient just trying to figure out everything, going to the journals and figuring out why, because they have every access to every journal that's ever been written in the history of the world. They have access to records, other patients that have undergone the same thing, and then they can tie it. They can look at your genetics, look at the stuff, come up with what drugs you need, which vitamins you should be on, how we should be treating you, what biohacking device, things you should be doing that's going to interact, like say, with your mitochondria in a certain way. I mean, we can talk about this all day. But it's really going to be able to enhance us as humans, because we can look at things we've never looked at before with personalized medicine. So there's going to be a day where you just have your handheld app and it's going to tell you on an hourly basis exactly what you should be doing, what you should be eating at this time, which vitamins you need to be taking, everything, and interact real world with what's going on into your body with sensors that are going to know exactly everything that's going on. I mean, we already have those, but it's going to become more and more advanced. So that's the first thing I want you to be, to be, kind of thinking about. Again, that's an entire show in and of itself, AI and personalized medicine. I would say trend number 2, advanced gene editing and new discoveries. I think we've talked about it on this show. There's this technology called CRISPR where you can, cut genes in a certain way and add things. And it's really very, very interesting. But this CRISPR technology has already it's already getting FDA approval in some areas where we're going to be able to reverse diseases, for example, like sickle cell and other things. It's going to be very easy initially to sort of manipulate diseases that are single gene mutations. That's obviously easy. You just say, hey, it's gene, we're not going to go into all the details, but it's gene whatever, gene A, 1B, whatever, right? We can manipulate that utilizing CRISPR technologies and potentially, heal people. Now, there's still, we've got a ways to go on that. And then it's going to go to diseases that involve 10 genes and then diseases that involve 100 genes. And if we're looking by 2035, 2040, again, I'm just throwing out numbers because we have no idea how fast this. In fact, AI is progressing at such a rapid pace. At some point, it's going to get so wild that all of our models aren't even going to be able to model how fast this stuff goes because they teach themselves, which is a whole other ethical, discussion that we can have. But imagine by the year 2035, 2040, it can edit 100 genes, 1,000 genes, right? And to be able to just say, okay, we're just going to edit all the genes that are responsible for us aging as humans, and then we no longer age. I mean, this is the kind of things that people, are looking for. And so we have to ask ourselves the ethical question, should we be playing God? Is this a good idea or is this not, a good idea? And whether you're religious or not, it's still ethical questions. I mean, what are we trying to do? I mean, are we all trying to live forever? What does that look like? And so on. But the enhancements in life expectancy are so dramatic. I always tell my kids, man, they are so lucky to be the age they are now, because by the time that 20 years from now, I mean the advancements in slowing down aging, it's ridiculous what's coming down the pipe. Okay, trend number 3, and this one again, there's a lot of stuff if you really want to dive into this, but this is AI as a personal psychologist or psychiatrist. This is some scary stuff going on right now, because there are things right now that I've seen in social media. And again, I don't want to go down these rabbit holes, but there are, anecdotal stories. And again, I haven't interviewed these people. I haven't seen it. It's just obviously when, people are reporting on this stuff, they may or may not be biased. I mean, I'd have to do even more digging, but there is these things where people are already using things like ChatGPT as their personal, psychiatrist or psychologist. And sometimes it has ended very, very badly. I mean, there's reports where people have actually, committed suicide. So I'm not talking about people kind of doing it on their own or experimenting with what's available now. I'm talking about developing amazing programs, developed by psychiatrists and neurologists and all these other peoples that really act as this kind of incredible addition, to us to really help us with anxiety and depression and all these other, psychiatric disorders that are there, and then integrate that with what we talked about before, which is personalized medications based on our brain scan or certain vitamins. Imagine like we have like a routine brain scan, or we have some kind of interface in our brain that tells us exactly how it's working, and then the AI says, hey, do this, and then you can change your brain this way. So the what we're going to be able to do in changing our mood and changing, kind of our outlook in life, and being able to interact with our personal psychologists, who then can make suggestions on what medications we should be on, what foods we should be intake, what foods we shouldn't be. It's going to be fascinating, and you could go down this rabbit hole, forever, but there's so many permutations of what's going to happen, and no one knows exactly, how it's going to happen. Now, let's ponder this other question. What happens when we get to artificial general intelligence, which I can tell you is not that far off, and it's scarily a lot, the predictions were wrong because it's coming a lot faster than we thought it was going to come. But is there going to be a time where almost they are sentient beings? In other words, they are thinking on their own. Again, with artificial intelligence, when you're thinking about like, AGI and beyond that, and super intelligence, you're talking about machines that potentially can be alive. Now, they're not alive in the way we're alive, but they're alive because if they're making independent thoughts and decisions and talking to each other and making decisions, again, we can ponder what that's going to mean for humanity and all, but how are they going to understand us? Could they almost become or teach themselves how to become a human being and have almost the same feelings and allow themselves to feel all these things and then be able to counsel us in a certain way? I'm thinking that's more 2035 or 2040. And again, we can talk to the most brilliant AI scientists and brilliant doctors and brilliant whoever you want. We don't know where it's going. We just know that it's moving really, really fast, but we don't know what it's going to look like. But again, another field, I think that the psychology and psychiatric field is going to be disrupted so dramatically here. Coming up, it's going to be fascinating, to see it. So for you guys that are practicing that kind of stuff, I would really, really understand how AI works and incorporate it into your own practices, and then think about what your value is going to be, as we go. And to be honest with you, there's going to be a lot of humans that just want other humans to talk to, not just an AI, no matter how realistic, it may seem, but we will see. We will see where that goes. Okay, trend number 4, the brain-computer interfaces, which I've really mentioned before. Implants are really going to get to the point where we can really restore function and movement for people that have been disabled for all kinds of stuff, as long as they have the moving parts. Now, where these interfaces are really interesting is if you think about where robotics is coming. If you think about, for those of you that are movie fans, one of my favorite, you know me with the movie analogies. But anyway, in like Terminator 2, remember a lot of it was the reason they were able to build all the technologies because they found his forearm and his hand, right? And they had that stored away in that Cyberdyne, systems place and whatever. Those robotic arms and hands, I mean, we have prosthetic devices right now, robotics, but what's coming down the road is going to be so intricate and so fascinating, and we're going to be able to reconnect our nervous systems to, like, basically prosthetic. I don't even want to call them prosthetic devices because then you think of things that are non-moving or they're just like really, really clunky. I mean things that have the same dexterity, the same feeling, and with the brain-computer interfaces, instead of people being able to, for example, use a mechanical arm that is very, very functional, because of the plug-in with that interface, when they touch things in the future, they will be able to feel it. So, for example, if they grab an apple, they'll be able to feel it as if it was an apple because of the brain-computer interface. These are fascinating, subjects. And so let's talk about another movie, okay, that it's really good. It's like in the movie Avatar, it was like, they're on this other planet, but back home, they did already on Earth, they were able to, like, say you had, paralysis, they could just give you, robotic legs, and it's just normal. You just kind of go back to normal. You walk around, and it's normal. And so these enhanced, humans are interesting, but that's really like where the brain-computer interface is, because everything is going to have coding in it, and then it's going to interface with our brain, and so we're going to, like whether we're in the real world or kind of living in these virtual realities, it's going to be our reality. So I don't know where that's going, but it's really, really fascinating, to think about it. So here's a deep thought. What if with all these brain, computer interfaces, are our thoughts going to become hackable? Right? Like, how hackers break into our accounts right now and wipe them out? What if they break into our brain and start putting thoughts in there, or do like an Inception where they tell us what to do, or scramble our brain? Again, there's so many things. I'll leave that to people a lot smarter than me to figure it all out. But I'll be watching very, very intently, because it's really going to make a huge impact in our lives. Okay, next, robotic and autonomous surgeries. I've talked about this before. We don't have to get into it that much. We're still, I think, quite far away. I mean, think about it. I mean, finally, Waymos are out there. I posted recently my first drive with my family members in this autonomous car. Pretty cool. That thing was flawless, no problem. It got us from point A to point B, and then we ended up taking Waymos. We were in San Francisco. It was really fascinating, the Waymos. But as you know, like Tesla's full self-driving still hasn't quite launched. So I think we're quite a bit of ways from allowing fully autonomous robots to do our surgery, but it is certainly coming down the pipe. So right now we have robotic devices that are actually controlled by the surgeons themselves. But what I'm talking about with robots is when the robots are actually doing the surgery on their own. We're kind of telling robots, here's the surgery to do, check on them, make sure they're doing okay. But really they're doing, the surgery. Robots don't. Right? They don't have emotions. They don't have anything. They don't get tired. I mean, those robots, if you think about things like, some of the most fascinating surgeries that I used to kind of research and look into, and you should too. It's like, for example, separating Siamese twins. You got teams of people rotating for, sometimes those things take a day. Imagine having, like 3 robots working on it. They never get tired. Doesn't matter how long it takes, right? They're going to be meticulous. They're going to be precise. And so it's just really, and so how long is it before human surgeons become obsolete? Or is there a day where, there are so few human surgeons that they're highly coveted because there's just a group of people that are not trusting of the robots, or are just worried about when the robotic revolution takes over, and when, like Terminator, becomes alive, and they don't want to go under the knife with robots. So, maybe I'll still be of some value, 20 years from now, but that's to be determined. We will see. I'm going to fight the good fight, though, to still, stay valuable. Okay, let's get off of robotics. We've scared people enough. Massive biohacking centers. You know how much, my passion about biohacking. We talk about it all the time. We don't have to get into it. Light therapies are getting more and more advanced. We have these quantum imprinting things that you can do with light that can change the way your cellular behavior works. Now there's just so many things to do. Oxygen therapies, all these things. Imagine these massive biohacking centers. They're coming. In fact, I know, without giving away details, there is a group that's already building these like 50,000 square foot biohacking centers where you can go and basically have like full genetic analysis and scans of your body and energy scans and all these things, and then get into all these biohacking protocols and have personalized medicine. These things are coming, and they're going to incorporate a lot of the things that we talked about before. Listen, the name of the show is Recharging the Human Battery, which is one of our slogans, at our hypercharge clinics, and this is really going to become more and more popular, where people go to these centers, and hopefully Hypercharge becomes one of these, these massive, biohacking centers as we continue to grow. But these centers are going to exist where people go and recharge their batteries, no different than you go and recharge your Tesla or other electric vehicles. So we'll see how these things evolve. There's going to be these longevity centers where really you go there and it slows down your aging, or maybe even reverses aging, and you just kind of go through this path, whether it's a conveyor belt and you do all this stuff. I don't know. No one knows. We're just in the infancy of these things, but it's going to be really, really fascinating to see. Okay, trend number 7, talked about it plenty on the show, regenerative medicine and anti-aging. We've talked about taking our own stem cells, putting them back into our bodies. We do this routinely in our clinics now with excellent results for arthritis, things like that. We're talking about whole body regenerative medicine therapies with stem cells, utilizing a lot of products that are basically like day zero cells, products from like amniotic fluid and the placenta and things like that, which again we've covered to some degree. I just give you a thing. So if you think about this, when we put those types of cells in the body, again, this is not something we're doing in the United States now, but it's already being done. The studies clearly show if you put these young stem cells next to our own stem cells, so if you put a young stem cell next to an old stem cell, the old stem cell gets younger and starts acting like a younger stem cell. So you can imagine our stem cells being exposed to these younger stem cells, basically reverses their aging, which then reverses our aging, because it's our decrease in our production of stem cells, because they have to replicate over time, that is one of the things that causes aging. So as we start really honing in on these therapies and the FDA starts coming around and we're starting to do these things, and there's amazing research being done in the United States, it is also going to play into the whole narrative of slowing down the aging process and allowing people to live for much, much longer. I'm talking biblical, years. Remember in the beginning of the Bible, right? People were living 900 years, 800 years. Hey, not too far-fetched with what we are seeing. Now, part of that early on, it's going to definitely we're going to need to enhance ourselves. So a lot of our body parts are going to have to be replaced with either robotics or organs that we grow in the lab. I'm going to talk about that in a minute, and other things. But yes, this whole stem cell technology and anti-aging is absolutely going to change the way we age and grow. And there's so much coming down the pipe on that. Okay, trend number 8. Microbiome engineering. I think we've talked about it a little bit on the show, but our microbiome, and that's basically the bacteria that lives in our gut, is responsible for so many different things. And microbiomes, we share our microbiomes in our communities, in our families, and so we have all these different traits. So like different countries have different types of bacteria that you have, and if you move to another country and you're amongst the tribe or you marry into a family or something like that, you share a lot of this stuff. So the microbiome is responsible for so many different things. Like 90% of our serotonin is produced in our gut, and that's a lot of interaction with the way our bacteria interacts with the gut. And again, it's too complicated to go through in my 2 minutes that I have on this one topic. But I can tell you that engineering the microbiome is going to make a huge difference, because if we can change the types of species that we have in our gut and are able to really control that, then those species are going to produce certain chemicals that can modulate things like our immune system, because a lot of our immune system is actually in our gut, and it interacts with all these microbiomes. And I'm telling you, if you guys go on YouTube or do other stuff, I've actually had Dr. Emran Meyer, one of the leading microbiome researchers in the world. We had a fascinating discussion. But if you guys go online, you should really listen to how the microbiome interacts with our entire health and wellness. A sick microbiome means a sick human being. So there are all these different facets. So that's another thing that we should look at. Okay, trend number 9, wearable and implantable health tech. So right now, you guys know about Whoop devices. You know, my kids are obsessed with their Whoop and their recovery overnight and looking at what their, resting heart rate is and just how they're doing. And it's actually really helped them. So I really like the wearable technology. I personally, I'm a big proponent of the wearable technology for my patients. I haven't done it myself because I'm such a type A personality that if I start obsessing about what my heart rate is on an every 5-minute basis, it's just another thing that's going to distract me from the immense amount of work that I have to do. So that's just me for my personality, but I think wearable devices are great. Where it gets really fascinating is the implantable technology. So I'm a big proponent of continuous glucose monitors because monitoring your glucose on a daily basis and keeping that at a steady state is a great way, to fight disease and fight inflammation and all kinds of things. And obviously for diabetics, it's a must because you need to know where your blood sugars are so you can do that. But we're going to have continuous wearable devices wearable implantable devices, I should say, that monitors everything. Like literally all of your labs on a constant basis. And again, that's going to interface into artificial intelligence and these programs that then tell us what's the next step, So again, I'm not telling people to get obsessive on these things, but yes, it is definitely going to help to keep our balance and homeostasis and proactively keep ourselves healthy and well, living longer, and more importantly, living better because, right, other things, can happen. But also these implantable devices may be able to pick up things right before they happen. So imagine an implantable device that also looks at your heart rhythm and says, hey, an event is just about to happen or is 30 minutes away, then boom, immediately you can get a medical attention before it even happens. So it's like a precognition. It's almost like, you're seeing into the future before it happens, or it's looking and saying, hey, this person's about to get sick. Not to mention the revolutionary things like that are going to do in hospitals. We're on a continuous monitoring basis, not somebody coming around doing labs every 6 hours. I mean continuous. Immediately, the doctor gets alerted. These labs are out of whack. This person's about to get sick. They need to immediately get transferred to the ICU because they're about to get sick or have an event or need to go to surgery right now. So what wearable technology is going to do is absolutely incredible. Okay, trend number 10. You guys are all aware of this, virtual reality. What is coming in virtual reality and how it's going to affect our brains and learning and things like that is going to be incredible. So VR is going to play a big role in rehabbing people from injuries and things like that. And immersive therapies are incredible. So if you do therapies in VR even now, so if you do without even literally moving anything in VR, if you're able to use your brain, say you can't even use your right arm because you have some injury, if you can use your brain and in virtual reality kind of think about, for example, flexing your bicep, we know your bicep actually gets stronger. And that's how eventually the neural connection between your brain and your bicep can be reestablished. And as long as there's still a connection between the brain and the bicep, eventually you can get that functioning back. And there's just some really, really fascinating stuff. Not to mention immersive therapies. Like say somebody is going through a horrific, emotional trauma or something like that. Imagine going into VR worlds that are immersive, where you can kind of live there, and it's great. I mean, and you can create whatever world you want. You're a big fan of like the cartoon, the Smurfs. Like you can just live in Smurf Village and be a Smurf and just be happy and just, you can just do all the Smurf songs and just, parade around. And maybe that is the way we treat depression. And I know this sounds it almost sounds wild, but I'm telling you, people are working on these things right as we speak, and it's just so fascinating what we can do. I mean, I've already fooled around with some programs that are already available, on these wearable devices that are really, really immersive and very calming and very relaxing, and put you into these great parasympathetic states, which are very much kind of similar to what you would find in where you would find in something like meditating for, an hour or two. Imagine being able to do that just by going in these immersive worlds. It's a lot easier to do. right, than sitting there meditating. And if the biochemical responses in your body are kind of similar, it's going to be really, really fascinating. All right. One of the I wanted to so let's talk about this. Like people like Walt Disney have their head in cryo, right? They're frozen in cryo. You see it in all these movies. I always use movie analogies because I don't know, I just love movies. But anyway, you remember like in Star Wars, they used to freeze the kind of the people, on the wall. I believe it was like Han Solo that was frozen on that wall where Jabba the Hutt was, right? Jabba the Hutt took him as like a prisoner, and he was just frozen there for a long, long time, and then Luke Skywalker comes and saves him. Pretty cool stuff. And people are starting to freeze themselves in these cryotherapy chambers, and you see it in these futuristic movies, where people go into these cryo chambers, or they go into these liquid chambers where you're basically going to this cryo sleep, and then you're woken up. So you say, well, what's the advantage of that? Well, as technologies improve, can we, take people out of, these cryo sleeps and then utilize things like nanobots, which I haven't even talking about. Our time is kind of getting slim here, so I wanted to get to something that's really interesting like cryo. But there are things like nanobots that can repair the body. This is real stuff. This is stuff people are working on right now. There are nanoparticles where you can rebuild scaffolding for spinal cord, for nerve injuries, for all kinds of different, tissues. There is tissue engineering where you can 3D print livers and hearts and kidneys and things like that, and then re-engineer them. So you can imagine if you cryo your body when it's sick, imagine then bringing that body back, or for example, and again, I'm just going down crazy rabbit holes. I don't want you guys, but it's coming. Imagine if you just cryo freeze your head, right? So you have your brain there, and let's say your brain is of reasonable health when you've frozen yourself. It's just your body is dying and giving out, but your brain is preserved, or at least it's fixable. Then we can put your brain on a fully robotic body, AKA RoboCop, okay, and then just bring you back, and then your brain, and then we have all these different technologies that can keep your brain healthy and regenerating itself for long periods of time. So maybe those people can be brought back and then live for another 500 years. I mean, this is scary stuff. Now, this is what people are thinking about, right? So from the beginning of time, if you look at the writings, probably you can look at hieroglyphics. I'm not a hieroglyphic expert. I couldn't tell you a single thing about hieroglyphics or what was on the caves. I probably should look into that. I'm sure it's super interesting. But I'm sure from the beginning of time, human beings have been fascinated by this thoughts of living forever, right? If you think about, right, in Egypt, what did they do? Mummies. You mummify yourself because then you went to some other place and you live forever. So we're obsessed with it, but we've been obsessed with finding ways to live forever since the dawn of time. And so if we can get to the point where we can cryo-freeze ourselves at any point, or if we are going to start traveling to places like Pluto and beyond, or other things, obviously we have to, or our technologies have to be so advanced, or we have to literally become robots for the most part, other than our brain, or upload our brain into a robot to be able to make those journeys. Anyway, these are all the things that are coming down the pipe. So it is so fascinating what we're going to look like, in 10 years, in 20 years. These enhanced humans walking around, these humans that have been taken out of cryo, these humans that are on their way to another galaxy. That might be a little bit, far-fetched for now. Let's get to Mars first before we get to another galaxy. But there's so many things are coming down the pipe, and I think the question, and I'll end it this way on this first segment. Is like this. I think we're going to be able to achieve all of these things. I think that we're going to, build these AIs that are completely on their own, and they're a billion times smarter than us, etc. I think we're going to be able to, rebuild organs, rebuild bodies, connect, the brain to robots, and we can live that way. But I'll leave it this way. just because we can or will be able to, should we do that? I mean, this is always it always goes into the ethical things. Should we do that? Again, whether you're religious or not, should we be playing God? Okay? I don't know the answer to that question. I just know we're going to do it. So we just have to deal with it. So for those people that are like, I can't believe this, it's going to happen. So we just have to figure out ways to do it safely. And we'll talk about that a little bit more on the other side of the break. This is Recharging the Human Battery. I'm Dr. Sinicropi. We're on AM 950 radio, and this is an interesting one. All right, let's wrap this up. This is Recharging the Human Battery. I'm Dr. Sinicropi. We're on AM 950 radio. And you know what? This has been one of my favorite episodes. Why? Because talking about what the future looks like, we always talk about the future. And obviously, we've been doing this since the beginning of time. But talking about it now, where things are advancing at a pace that has never been seen before, and I mean that literally. We've never, the speed is ridiculous. And if you listen to some of the smartest people, some are afraid, some are giddy, right? We don't know. And I think that thinking about this, for those of us that are involved in taking care of people and things like that, I think it's really, really important that we have these conversations and discussions, because we have to understand how are we going to handle this situation. Again, whether we want this to happen or not happen, it's going to happen. So we have to have these conversations. Why do we have to have these conversations? Well, again, I told you it's job security, but also it's like if those of you that are out there that have like serious diseases, or you've had a tremendous, like you've had a horrible, accident or something like that, you want to stay abreast and figure out how quickly these advances are going to be able to help you. But on a more thinking about it on a global standpoint, and I think I'm going to be doing some more, podcasts with certain people, because this is one of my favorite topics. With AI, robotics, regenerative medicine, the ability to again 3D print organs and all these other things, it's moving so fast. There are two camps on this. There are a camp of people that are the optimists that believe that we are going into the greatest time in human history, the utopia where nobody is sick, where everybody has plenty, where we get rid of poverty, where everybody has a roof over their head. And basically, we just get to be creative and do art and express ourselves as humans while everything else is autonomous around us, right? That's one vision. The other vision is a dystopian, future where things go bad, where nefarious characters, I talked about people hacking into our own health accounts or making us sick, or hacking into our brains and things like that. I know it sounds far-fetched right now, but to be honest with you, if we went back 20 years and I told you that there were going to be hackers hacking into your emails and your software systems and doing all this stuff and holding you, hostage for ransom, you would say, oh my God, this guy, that's never going to happen. I'm sure they're going to come up with great security. Well, guess what? It didn't happen. And for some people, they're living that dystopia right now when their bank accounts are wiped out because they clicked on the wrong email. So it's one thing to click on the wrong email, but it's another thing where the hackers actually hack into your brain and actually steal your personality or imprison you in some virtual world. And I'm being serious. I mean, this is crazy stuff, but it is advancing at a rate that is 10 times faster than how the internet and all this other stuff advanced. And so we don't have the time to sit around and say, oh, it's another time. That'll be 2050. This is 2030. This is 2035. So do we want a utopian future or a dystopian future? So I think the more people can think about this and try to make a utopian future, I'm more in the camp of utopia. I don't think it's all going to happen at one time, but I think that the amount of healing, the amount of longevity, the amount of people being able to live out incredible lives and just feel good every single day because of personalized medicine and how we can manipulate their bodies and things like that. I think it's wonderful, because then we can achieve the pinnacle of human existence, which is being as tied into our world as and as creative as we can be, and just really experiencing humanity and experiencing each other. That's the utopian view. I'm not going to go into the dystopian view anymore. We're just going to push that to the side and hope we can go in the direction of utopia and hope that good prevails over evil and that we can have a better, happier, and healthier society. And on that note, hopefully I left you with a little bit of positivity. This has been a great show. Please leave me comments in the comment section wherever you are watching this show or podcast. Love to answer your questions. Call with your questions. Love to hear from you. So much else to unpack on this topic. This is Recharging the Human Battery. I'm Dr. Sinicropi. It's been a pleasure. This is AM 950 Radio. We will see you next week.